Yo, what is going on? This is Philip Jean-Marie, aka Max Cooper. I'm actually here at the Power Morphicon, and I wanted to show you my wonderful helmet. I also wanted to shout out everyone who watched Power Rangers Wild Force, and even the old fans and the new fans. Also want to let you guys know, shout out to Tiger Tales. It's an audio storytelling channel on YouTube. Make sure to go ahead and like and subscribe. And also wanted to let you know, if you're going through some issues in life, remember 3 words: never give up. All right? So I hope everyone is doing well. Love you a lot. Peace.
Hello everybody and welcome to Tiger Tales, a place you'll find stories and fanfictions written and read to you by your host, me, Tai Tiger. Other than today's chapter, today we're diving back into our Marvel and DC fanfiction universe, a universe where I very cleverly combined the likes of Marvel and DC, and this universe has multiple storylines crossing over Tiger Tales and Tiger Tales The Lost Stories channels, with multiple storylines ongoing throughout, crossing over with each other, and so forth. This story is actually written by Cosplay Dude 637 and is the first entry written by someone else in this universe. Gambit and Rogue are no longer just the sidekicks to the Mutants for Hire, they're now going off and making their own team. So let's dive in. Wild Cards, Chapter 1, New Beginnings. Remy LeBeau, better known as Gambit, leaned against the wooden railing of the school's front porch, watching the early morning mist roll over the sprawling grounds. His thoughts were a jumble of responsibilities and memories of the days when he was just a streetwise thief with a deck of charged cards and a silver tongue. Now here he was, co-running a school for mutants alongside Rogue, his steadfast partner and love.
Remy, you're brooding again,
Rogue said, Rogue's voice teased from behind him. Her southern drawl softened the edges of her words. She stepped beside him, her gloved hand resting lightly on his arm. He turned to her, a half-smile playing on his lips.
Can't help it, Shell. Seems like yesterday we were dodging sentinels and I was stealing from the rich just to survive,
Gambit said. Rogue nodded, her green eyes scanning the peaceful scene before them.
We've come a long way. Now we're helping these kids find a future they never thought possible,
Rogue muttered. As if on cue, the sound of moving truck echoed from the gravel driveway leading up to the school. Gambit squinted through the mist, making out the figures of Alyssa and Sam, new arrivals to the school. Alyssa, his younger sister, whom he'd only recently discovered, and Sam, her tech-savvy boyfriend.
They're finally here,
Rogue said, her voice twinged with excitement. Gambit nodded, feeling a mixture of emotions as he watched them unload boxes filled with their belongings. Alyssa, with her fiery spirit and determination, reminded him so much of himself, yet she had grown up without him, unaware that they shared blood until recently.
I'll go give him a hand,
Gambit said, pushing off from the railing. Rogue caught his arm gently.
Let them settle in first, Remy. They'll find us when they're ready.
Gambit sighed, realizing that she was right, as always.
Guess you're right, Shell. Patience ain't exactly my strong suit,
Gambit said.
That's why you got me,
She chuckled softly. Together they stood there watching the sun rise higher over the school grounds, a new day dawning for them all. In the distance, the faint echo of mutant powers being practiced floated on the breeze, a reminder of the world they were building one student at a time. As the morning mist began to lift, Gambit couldn't shake the feeling that Alyssa and Sam's arrival, their little family, was becoming whole in ways he never imagined, and in the midst of challenges and uncertainties of the mutant world, that thought brought him a quiet sense of hope. Gambit and Rogue exchanged a glance as they approached Professor M's office, located at the heart of the school. The professor, a telepath of formidable skill, often seemed to know things before they were spoken aloud, a fact that still unnerved Gambit at times, despite the last few weeks of working alongside him. Knocking lightly on the door, Gambit called out,
Professor M, we've got news. Allison and Sam have just arrived.
He told him. Come in, Rummy, Rogue. Professor M's calm voice responded from within. The office was warmly lit, shelves lined with books on mutant history and psychology. Professor M sat behind a polished oak desk, his silver hair neatly combed back. He looked up with a knowing smile as they entered, his piercing blue eyes seeming to penetrate their thoughts.
We figured you already know.
Rogue remarked, her gloved hands resting on her hips. Professor M nodded, tapping his temple lightly. It's a gift and a curse, knowing things before they unfold. Welcome news. Nonetheless, how are things settling in? He asked. Gambit leaned against the desk, crossing his arms.
It seems like Allison's eager to jump right in. Sam's keeping pace, helping her to unpack. They've got that new home glow.
Gambit told him. Professor M nodded thoughtfully. Good to hear. The school is as much their sanctuary as it is of all our students. Professor M said. Rogue shifted her weight, her concern evident.
And what about Professor Xavier? Any change?
Rogue asked. The professor's expression softened. Charles remains in a deep coma. However, his vitals are stable, and he's resting peacefully in the medbay. We monitor him closely, of course, hoping for any sign of improvement, Professor M told them. Gambit's jaw tensed at the mention of their mentor's condition. Charles Xavier, the founder of their cause and beacon of hope and mutant kind, lay incapacitated, a stark reminder of the ongoing struggle they faced.
We'll keep an eye on him,
Rogue said firmly, her voice tinged with determination. Professor M nodded gratefully. Thank you, Rogue. And Remy, I trust you'll extend a warm welcome to Alice and Sam. They'll need our support as they adjust, he told him. Gambit straightened, his resolve firm.
Count on it, Professor,
Gambit said. As they turned to leave, Professor M's voice followed them. Remember, every student here is a unique gift waiting to be nurtured, Professor M told them. Gambit glanced at Rogue, a flicker of determination passing between them. They had a school to run, students to guide, and a legacy to uphold, one that Professor Xavier had entrusted to them even in his absence.
Hey, Kirito! Did you hear about that new podcast?
What new podcast, Asu?
It's called the Tiger Nexus Podcast, run by Tai Tiger.
Hold on. I know that name. He's the guy behind Tiger Tales on YouTube, right?
Yep, that's right. And now he's launched his own podcast where he interviews content creators and nerds of all kinds.
No way, that sounds so cool. What's the name of the podcast again?
The Tiger Nexus Podcast. You can find it on all major podcast platforms.
Hold up. He's had Cosplay Dude 637 on there? That's amazing!
I know, right? He's also interviewed A-Crown, Mark the Red Corners Ranger, and many others.
I am totally subscribing to the Tiger Nexus podcast. I don't want to miss anything.
Tune into the Tiger Nexus Podcast by Tai Tiger for fascinating interviews with your favorite content creators and nerds. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. Don't miss out.
Meanwhile, in the heart of Nova Roma, a city built upon the ruins of ancient civilizations, life continued unaware of the latent power resting beneath its surface. Deep within the dormant volcano that silently watched over the city, a large stone began to crack. Slowly, molten lava seeped through the fissures and casting an eerie glow upon the chamber within. As the stone finally gave way, a figure emerged, her form obscured by the flowing lava that clung to her like a second skin. Amara Aquila, known to her friends as Magma, stepped forth from the volcanic chamber. The heat radiating from her body matched the intensity of the magma that surrounded her, yet her expression remained serene, almost ethereal. With a flick of her hand, the lava that adorned her body receded, leaving her unscathed and powerful. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar surge of her mutant abilities coursing through her veins. Nova Roma, with its ancient secrets and hidden powers, had awakened her once more. Her mind raced with questions, echoing the uncertainty that came with her sudden emergence. How long had she slept within the confines of that volcano? What force had stirred her from the slumber now, and at this precise moment? The most pressing of all, what role would her return play in the intricate tapestry of mutant kind's destiny? Lost in contemplation, a voice unlike any other intruded upon her thoughts, clear and commanding. "Hello, Magma. My name is Professor M, and I oversee the safe haven for mutants, a place known as Xavier's School for the Gifted," a voice told her. Startled, Amara looked skyward, her gaze searching for the source of the voice that now resonated within her mind. "Why are you running Xavier's? What happened to Professor X?" she queried aloud, her voice carrying a mixture of curiosity and concern. "All will be revealed in due time. Please make your way back to the school and I'll explain everything," the voice replied, its presence fading from her consciousness as swiftly as it arrived. Amara stood amidst the volcano landscape, the air thick with a scent of sulphur and the distant hum of city life. She felt the weight of Professor's words settled upon her shoulders, a call to action and understanding. With determination and a determined stride, Magma turned her back on the volcano, setting her course towards Xavier's School for the Gifted. Kurt Wagner, known to many as Nightcrawler, materialized in front of an old ruined monastery, his azure skin and demonic features momentarily cloaked in the smoke of his teleportation. Beside him was Kitty Pryde, also known as Shadowcat, stood next to him as their eyes fade from a glossy white to their normal color. Kitty looked around in confusion. Kurt, this place looks ancient," Kitty said, her voice tinged with bewilderment. "You said you were just here a few months ago," Kitty said, confused. Nightcrawler nodded. His golden eyes scanned the crumbling stone walls and overgrown vegetation. "Ja, Kitty, it was nothing like this. It was still intact, almost pristine," Nightcrawler said, confused as well. They exchanged puzzled glances, trying to make sense of the drastic transformation. The air was thick with a scent of moss and decay, a stark contrast to the vibrant energy Kurt had encountered during his previous visit. Before they could delve further into their thoughts, a voice echoed within their minds, unfamiliar yet authoritative. "Kurt, Kitty, can you hear me?" a voice said. Both mutants froze, looking around for the source of the voice. "Who's there?" Kurt responded, mentally his tone filled with urgency. "What's going on? This place has changed so much," Kurt said. "You both have been missing for some time now," the voice explained, calm and steady. "Much longer than you realize. Your absence has created a temporal distortion. We need you to return to the school immediately," the voice told them. Kitty exchanged a worrying glance with Kurt. "Missing? How long? And who are you?" Kitty barked. "My name is Professor M. I oversee Xavier's School for the Gifted. Time works differently where you were. I'll explain more when you arrive. It's imperative you return to the school at once," the voice told them. With determination and a determined nod, Kurt turned to Kitty. "Let's go, Cadet. We need to get back," Kurt told Kitty. Kitty placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Right behind you, Kurt." Kitty nodded. In a flash of smoke, Nightcrawler teleported them both back to Xavier's School for the Gifted, their minds buzzing with questions and the urgent need to understand the mystery of their disappearance. As the familiar surroundings of Xavier's School for the Gifted came into view, Kurt Wagner, Kitty Pryde, felt a strange sense of both relief and confusion. Just as the smoke from their teleportation dissipated, a figure descended gracefully from the sky, landing with a soft thud on the ground outside the school. Amara, known as Magma, dusted her off her hands as she approached them. "So you two got that mind call too, huh?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "Ja, from Professor M?" Kurt replied, still trying to piece everything together. "Whoever that is," Kitty added, a hint of skepticism in her tone. Before they could discuss further, a familiar southern drawl interrupted.
"Well, sugars, that's a long story,"
Rogue said, standing at the front of the gate with a knowing smile. "Schwetzer!" Kurt exclaimed, his face lighting up as he rushed over to her, enveloping her in a tight hug. Rogue returned the embrace, chuckling softly.
Hey there, little brother.
Rogue giggled. As the group gathered near the entrance, Amara's expression shifted from relief to concern. What's going on, Rogue? She demanded, her voice rather firm. Rogue sighed, glancing at the others before responding.
Like I said, sweetheart, it's a long story. Come on, new prof will fill you in.
She said. She turned towards the school, motioning them to follow. Without hesitation, the others fell in step behind her, their minds racing with questions. Rogue led the way, her pace steady, as they made their way through the familiar halls, ready to face whatever truths awaited them. Rogue led them through the school's winding corridors until they reached the door marked with a simple plaque, Professor M. She knocked lightly before pushing it open, revealing a warmly lit office lined with books and adorned with a few personal touches. Professor M stood from behind the large oak desk, his silver hair and gold skin catching the light as he smiled warmly at the newcomers. Welcome, my friends. It's so nice to meet you at long last. Gambit and Rogue speak rather highly of you, Professor M told them. Kurt's eyes widened with surprise and hope. Remy is here also? He asked, his voice tinged with excitement. Oh, heavens, yes. If it was not for him, this school may very well not be standing right now, the professor replied with a chuckle. The initial introduction settled, Kitty Pryde crossed her arms, her patience clearly wearing thin. Okay, I am over the nicey nice crap. What is going on here? Where is Xavier? She snapped at them, her voice sharp with frustration. Professor M smiled softly, unperturbed by her outburst. Yes, straight to the point, Miss Pryde, he acknowledged, his tone understanding. He took a deep breath before continuing, his expression turning more serious. What I am about to tell you may be difficult to accept, but it's important you understand the gravity of the situation. Since Union Day, the world has changed dramatically. On that day, most of the world's heroes and villains vanished without a trace. The event left a powerful vacuum and plunged many into chaos. Xavier fell into a deep coma. And since then, we've been doing everything we can to maintain a stability he fought so hard to create. The room fell silent as the weight of the professor's words settled over them. My name is Ace, and I use a device called the Color Matrix, which allows me to hijack alternative universe versions of myself. I have the multiverse at my disposal. From being a Power Ranger, to being a Spider-Man, to piloting the Orville, to being a Vampire Slayer. I can do it all. I can spend 8 hours of my time. Of course, time is different in each universe, but 8 hours of my time piloting a version of myself. So come, explore the multiverse with me. See what my world is like in different universes. Explore the multiverse. If you want to hear such stories, then come and listen to The Color Matrix on Tiger Tales, The Lost Stories, found on YouTube. Relentless assault of seismic waves, the streets once bustling with activity were now filled with panic as people fled from the destruction. Buildings shook, cars overturned, and the very ground beneath the city seemed to pulse with raw energy. At the center of the chaos stood a mutant known as Avalanche, his eyes wild with fury, his hands were outstretched, channeling the seismic energy that tore through the city. Where is he? Avalanche bellowed, his voice echoing through the crumbling streets. With a fierce wave of his hand, another blast of seismic force rippled out, hitting a nearby building. The structure groaned and then collapsed, reduced to rubble in seconds. The dust cloud that followed swept through the air, mingling with the screams of those trying to escape. He told me he'd come here, so here I am, Avalanche shouted, his voice a mix of anger and desperation. It was clear he was searching for someone, but who that was and why remained a mystery, lost amidst the devastation he was causing. Back at the school, the tension in Professor M's office was abruptly interrupted as the door swung open and a young boy, no more than 8 or 9 years old, rushed in, his face flushed with urgency. "Professor, come quick, you need to see the news," he blurted out, nearly tripping over his words in the haste. Professor M raised a calming hand. "Jim, slow down. What's going on?" he asked him. "There's some dude in grey armour attacking downtown," Jim replied, his voice high with excitement and concern. Kitty's eyes narrowed as realization struck her. "Avalanche," she spat, the name filled with a mixture of recognition and dread. Professor M's expression tightened. "Jim, go find Gambit and Rogue. Tell them to come to the war room at once," Professor M told them. Jim nodded, quickly, his face set with determination. With another word, his small frame began to shift and grow, transforming into a massive, fur-covered Sasquatch. With a final nod of acknowledgement, Jim took off running, his newfound super speed carrying him down the corridors in a blur. The urgency of the situation settled over the room. The calm before the inevitable storm, Professor M turned to the others, his voice steady but filled with the gravity of the moment. "We need to act fast. Let's head to the war room and prepare for what's to come," he told them. Moments later, the war room was filled with tense silence as Professor M, Kurt, Kitty, Amara, Gambit and Rogue took their seats around the table. The weight of the situation hung in the air, each of them knowing what the world was tearing on the edge of chaos. Professor M broke the silence, his voice calm but resolute. "I would not be doing this if it weren't necessary, but the world needs the X-Men. So I'd like the 5 of you to go and stop Avalanche," he told them. Rogue's eyes widened in disbelief.
Hold up, sugar. Are you crazy? Most of us haven't seen combat in, well, a very long time.
Rogue muttered. "I know this, Rogue," Professor M replied, his tone firm but understanding. "But we can no longer sit back and let the world fall apart," he told her. Gambit leaned back in his chair, shaking his head.
Fool, you don't play your hand if all you got is a bunch of wild cards,"
Gambit muttered. "Nein, the professor is right," Kurt interjected, slamming his hands on the table. "We need to get out of here," Kurt said. Kitty nodded in agreement. "I say we go. We can't just do nothing," Kitty said. Amara's eyes blazed with determination. "I'm ready to go," Amara called out. Gambit let out a sigh.
"Vous êtes tous fous,"
he muttered, shaking his head. Rogue leaned closer to Gambit, her eyes locking onto his.
Then you should lead us, Remy. You're the only one who's seen combat recently.
Rogue told him. Gambit straightened in his seat, still taken aback by Rogue's word.
"What you mean, us, Shell?"
Gambit asked. Rogue smiled, a glint of mischief in her eyes.
Oh, you know, I was going all along. I just wasn't saying we go as a team.
Rogue grinned. Gambit chuckled softly, shaking his head.
"It's beyond merde. I guess we are doing this then. I just got you back, Shell. I'm not going to lose you again,"
he said with a wink, his resolve firming up. Before anyone could respond, the door to the war room opened and Alyssa and Sam walked in, their expressions determined. "Not without us, you're not, Grandfather," Alyssa said, her voice filled with conviction. Sam nodded in agreement, standing beside Alyssa. "Yeah, we're in this together," he said. Professor M looked around the room, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. "It looks like we have a team." "What did you say?" "Oh, yes, that's it." "A team of wild cards." Professor M smiled. Sam grinned, the tension in the room lightened softly. "X-Men wild cards. It's got a nice ring to it," he said, flashing a smile. With the team assembled, the weight of the mission ahead was clear, but so was the strength they drew from each other. The X-Men wildcards were ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, united by a shared purpose and a determination to protect the world they called home. This story was written by Cosplay Dude 637 and is a part of the Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637 section of the Tai Tales channels, and of course he is a partner. It was narrated by myself. Make sure you check out the other Marvel and DC fanfiction universe storylines here on this channel. You can find a whole playlist with them all in order, but you can also find more storylines on the Tiger Tales Lost Stories channel, so make sure you check them all out. Now, on with the outro. Thank you very much for listening to this story. There are of course plenty more where that came from, on this specific channel and on other Tiger channels as well. There are plenty more Tiger Tales channels for you guys to find and explore, with all sorts of storylines, fanfictions to dive into. A huge shout out to the following: Cosplay Dude 637, my Parabatai, and Mark the Red Cornish Ranger. The three of us are the Three Ranger Bros. Then of course we have our partners, A Crown and Cosplay Sun 637, also known as Xander. Of course, a huge shout out to the Zero to Hero podcast, and of course, If You Give a Dad a podcast. If you want to find out more about these people, make sure you check out our website, the3rangerbrosstudios.com. That being said, make sure you check out the Tiger Nexus podcast, my own podcast where I interview people, content creators and geeks alike. Sometimes those two things intertwine. Now of course, a list of the other Tiger Tales channels can be found on the website, and also some of the channels are down below in the description. Make sure you go give them a listen to, because there's more where that came from. Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637 also returns on a lot of the Tiger Tales channels, including the original Tiger Tales. So make sure you check out his stories as well. I have plenty more content where that came from. I do gaming, reactions, I geek out about stuff, I show off my collectibles, my artwork, and a lot more. Again, some of these links will be in the description down below. If not, you can go check out the website, or check out the TikTok at Tai Tiger 777, where I talk about a lot about my other content. Of course, that being said, I love you all. Make sure you hit that like button, you subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss more stories coming to you from myself and the partners of the channel. We're of passion, everybody, and I shall see you guys real soon.
That before we can...
Don't touch my Pringles.
Bye!